Lila Harrington's cry cut through the first-class cabin so sharply that even the engines seemed to hesitate. It wasn't the soft, needy whimper of a restless baby. It was the kind of trembling, heartbreak-deep cry that makes every adult instinct freeze, because something small and fragile is pleading for help. And at the center of it all sat Daniel Harrington, a man who could command rooms full of investors, but suddenly could not calm his own 7-month-old daughter. Passengers shifted in their wide leather seats, the kind that recline into beds and cost more than most people's monthly rent. But all that comfort was useless now. Every sigh, every irritated shuffle of a shoe, every pointed glance toward seat 1C pressed against Daniel like stones. He tried rocking Lila gently, murmuring soft words he hadn't spoken since she was born. He tried the bottle. He tried the pacifier. He tried walking the quiet aisle with her tiny body pressed against his chest. Nothing softened her trembling or the rising desperation in her cry. What the passengers did not know, not the wealthy business magnate in the front row, not the polished socialite tapping complaints into her phone, not even the flight attendants exchanging worried glances, was that on this same flight sat a 17-year-old boy who already knew this sound. Not because he was a doctor, not because he was trained, but because he had once been the only person who could calm a baby sister whose cries felt just like this. And in a few minutes, that boy would stand up from his economy seat, decide to cross an invisible line he was never meant to cross, and do something that would change both of their futures forever. The cabin lights were dimmed into a warm amber glow, but nothing could soften the tension that had been building for nearly 2 hours and 40 minutes. Lila's cry had grown louder, sharper, more desperate. Her small fists were clenched tight, her cheeks flushed, her tiny body arching with discomfort as Daniel tried to hold her steady. He had never imagined himself in this position. He had built Harrington Dynamics from nothing, navigating a world of algorithms, data models, and boardrooms where every sentence mattered. People listened when he spoke. Decisions bent when he pushed. But now he was just a father who could not soothe his own child. His shirt collar clung to his neck with sweat, and the calm authority he usually carried had evaporated into the stale, pressurized air of the cabin. Beside him, the sleek walls of first class curved like a private sanctuary meant to shield him from the world. Tonight, they felt like walls closing in. Gerald Whitmore in seat 1A made another pointed sigh, the kind meant to signal frustration without saying a word. He checked his gold watch for the 10th time, glancing back at Daniel as if the baby's cries were a personal offense. A few rows behind, Cassandra Vale typed rapidly on her phone, whispering to her assistant, "If you can't control your baby, you shouldn't bring her on a long-haul flight," she muttered, not quietly enough. Daniel turned away, his jaw tightening. He had been judged before, in business, in negotiations, in moments of high pressure, but never like this. Never so personally. Never as a father. He bounced Lila gently, the way Elena usually did, but his movements were uneven, too anxious, too rushed. Lila only cried harder, her voice cracking from strain. Ms. Bennett, one of the flight attendants, approached with a sympathetic expression. "Sometimes white noise helps," she offered, placing a small speaker beside him. Ocean waves filled the cabin, but Lila's cries only pierced through them like lightning slicing across a dark sky. Mr. Collins tried next. "Maybe try walking her between the aisles? Just slowly. Sometimes the movement helps them settle." Daniel tried. He truly did. But every step down the aisle felt heavier than the last, and every passenger's eyes seemed sharper, less patient, more accusatory. When he finally sank back into seat 1C with Lila still trembling in his arms, his hands were shaking. Not from fear of failure in business, but fear of failing the one person who needed him most. He whispered her name softly. "Lila, please, sweetheart, please." His voice broke, the sound nearly lost under her cries, far behind them, separated by 4 rows and 2 different worlds. Malik Carter looked up from the page of notes he had been trying to review. The equations he'd been scribbling, a simple pattern about probability, written like a wave of possibilities, blurred as he listened. Each rise and fall of the baby's cry struck something old and familiar inside him. He knew this kind of cry. He had heard it night after night when his little sister Nia was born and refused to calm for hours. Back then, he had watched his exhausted mother stumble between work shifts, watched his grandmother fight tears as she tried every method she knew. Malik had refused to give up. He'd spent nights on the floor with Nia on his chest, humming gently, trying different holds, learning the rhythm of her breathing. He recognized that rhythm now. He closed his notebook. The patterns could wait. The competition could wait. Lila's cry tugged at something deeper than ambition, but fear held him still. He knew how people looked at boys like him, in certain neighborhoods, in certain rooms, on certain flights. A black teenager from the South Side walking into first class without permission. He could already imagine the questions. He could already feel the suspicion, the startled glances, the possibility that someone might think he didn't belong. He looked down at his hands, hands that had soothed his sister through the worst nights of her colic, hands that had solved problems no one taught him, hands that wanted to help. The cry rose again, sharper this time. Malik closed his eyes. He stood up. The movement was quiet, barely noticeable, but his heart pounded as he took a step toward the curtain dividing economy and first class. Passengers watched with mild confusion. A teenager moving forward on a plane always made some people uneasy. Malik could feel their eyes on him like a second gravity. Ms. Bennett blocked him instinctively. "Can I help you?" she whispered, polite but firm. "The baby," Malik said softly. I think I can help her." Her expression shifted, not rejection, just uncertainty. "Are you traveling with someone up there?" "No, ma'am." His voice was steady despite the fear coiling in his chest. "I've cared for a baby with the same kind of cry. I think she's overstimulated and maybe has trapped gas. If it's okay, I could try something." Before Ms. Bennett could respond, Daniel appeared in the aisle, holding Lila close as if he were afraid she might break. "I heard someone say they can help?" he asked, desperation stripping away every barrier of pride and status. Malik nodded once. "My name is Malik Carter," he said quietly. "I know I'm young, but I've been through this before. I think I can help your daughter breathe easier." Daniel hesitated only a second. Then he placed Lila into Malik's waiting arms. For a moment, Daniel could only watch as Malik adjusted his grip around Lila with a steady confidence that seemed far too natural for someone his age. Malik's hands were warm and sure, one supporting the curve of Lila's head, the other resting gently along her back. He didn't bounce her. He didn't rush. Instead, he held her close to his chest, letting her tiny body lean into the softness of his breathing. His voice rose in a low, quiet hum, an old melody shaped by generations before him. The effect was almost immediate. Lila's cry softened from a desperate call to a fragile whimper. The passengers who had been stiff with irritation now leaned in without meaning to. caught in the stillness spreading through the cabin like a layer of calm settling over turbulent waters. "She's overwhelmed," Malik said softly, barely glancing up. "Sometimes babies take in too much sound, too much movement. They don't know how to let it out except like this." Daniel stared. How do you know that?" Malik kept humming the same lullaby, slow and steady, each note landing like a feather. Lila's breath shifted, her small chest loosening as if finally remembering how to rest. "My sister, Nia," he said. "She used to cry like this every night. My grandma taught me this song, and these holds." He adjusted his hand slightly, applying a gentle line of pressure along the baby's spine. Not pushing, just guiding. It helps her body relax, helps the air in her belly move, helps her feel safe. Lila's eyes fluttered, her tiny fists unclenching as her breathing slipped into a soft, rhythmic pattern. Daniel's mouth opened, but for Yao, the first time in hours, he had no words. A boy, a stranger, a teenager from 4 rows back, had done what he could not. What trained nannies could not. What even the soothing machines he brought on board could not. Ms. Bennett exhaled slowly, her shoulders dropping with relief. Even Gerald Whitmore, who had been composing a mental speech of disapproval since takeoff, cleared his throat softly as if embarrassed by his earlier frustration. Cassandra Vale whispered to her assistant, not with annoyance this time, but with awe. "I've never seen anything like that." Malik lowered himself gently into the empty seat beside Daniel, still holding Lila as if she were made of something delicate and important. For a few long breaths, Daniel just watched his daughter sleep, really sleep. Her mouth softened, a faint line of drool forming at the corner of her lips, a sign of complete surrender to comfort. "She's okay," Malik said quietly, as if speaking too loud would break the spell. Daniel swallowed hard. "Thank you. Truly." "It's nothing," Malik said, but Daniel shook his head. "It's not nothing." He wanted to ask more, who this boy was, why he seemed older than 17 in ways beyond age, but something stopped him, a feeling he hadn't expected. Respect, the kind you handle gently so it grows instead of breaks. As Malik's humming faded, he straightened a little. "You can hold her now," he said, shifting Lila surprisingly seamlessly into Daniel's arms. The baby continued sleeping, her cheek falling against her father's chest with the same easy trust she had shown Malik. Daniel held her tighter, gratitude warming the space in his ribs. "You said your sister had colic?" Daniel asked. Malik nodded. "Bad. Really bad. Like this, but all the time. Grandma and Mom were so tired. Someone had to help, so..." He shrugged a little, but the gesture didn't hide the truth. "I learned. I practiced. I figured out what worked." "You're good at it," Daniel said. "Better than anyone I've seen." Malik's eyes lowered. It wasn't anything special, just love and patience. "I think babies feel that." Daniel studied him a moment, noticing for the first time the patched backpack at Malik's feet, the frayed zipper, the edges worn soft from years of use. He spotted the library barcode sticker still stuck to a book peeking from the side pouch. And on the flap of the backpack, small fabric badges stitched on with mismatched thread, symbols from math contests, regional qualifiers, national tournaments, some crisp, some faded. "You're a student?" Daniel asked. Malik nodded. "Yes, sir." "Where are you headed?" "London," Malik answered, "for a math competition." The words seemed too simple for the weight they carried. "Math?" Daniel echoed. "Yes, sir." Malik looked down at his notebook, which had slipped slightly when he stood earlier. A page was still open. No symbols or complex formulas that might throw a machine voice into confusion. Just gentle lines written in his careful handwriting. A pattern of numbers repeating like a quiet pulse. He explained it softly, not as a brag, but as a whisper. It's a puzzle about chances. Not the kind with symbols or strange markings, just a line of numbers, rising and falling like breathing, showing how possibilities grow when you combine them the right way. Daniel leaned closer, fascinated despite himself. "It's how I learn," Malik said, "turning things into patterns you can feel." Before Daniel could respond, Malik continued quietly. "If I do well, I could earn a full scholarship for a place where kids like me don't usually get in unless someone believes in them." Daniel felt his heart shift, slow and heavy. "You're going alone?" he asked. "Yes," Malik replied. "My neighborhood raised money for my ticket. They believe in me. I want to make them proud." Daniel blinked. "Your neighborhood paid for you to come to London?" Malik nodded once. "Barbershop, corner store, church, some neighbors who don't even know my name. They all put something in. People don't have much where I'm from, but they still give everything they can." Daniel looked at him differently now. Not as a boy who could calm a baby, not as someone who happened to be on the same flight, but as someone remarkable. He felt the quiet weight of that realization settle beside him, like a truth he should have seen long before. "So you're special," Daniel said softly. Malik shook his head. "No, just someone who was lucky enough to get help when he needed it. Someone who wants to give that help back." Lila stirred in Daniel's arms, making a tiny sound of contentment as if agreeing. Malik stood slowly, ready to return to his seat, but Daniel reached out, stopping him gently. "Stay a moment," he said, his voice softer than he intended. "If you're comfortable." Malik hesitated, then nodded and sat again. In that brief silence, broken only by the steady hum of the engines and Lila's faint breath, two very different worlds settled quietly beside each other. A billionaire and a boy with a patched backpack, a child asleep between them. A moment that neither of them could quite explain, a moment that would not stay small for long. For a while, Malik and Daniel remained in a quiet pocket of calm that felt almost out of place within the polished walls of first class. Lila slept in her father's arms with a peace so complete it seemed unreal compared to the storm she had unleashed earlier. Daniel kept one hand lightly against her back, as if afraid that the stillness might dissolve if he loosened his hold. Malik sat beside him, hands folded neatly, trying not to intrude on the moment. Yet his presence felt less like an intrusion and more like a soft thread connecting two lives that should never have touched. One woven from wealth and influence, the other from grit and neighborhood hope. The unlikely closeness of that moment lingered between them like a breath neither wanted to break. Daniel turned to him with a genuine curiosity that had replaced the exhaustion in his eyes. "Malik, you said you're going to London for a mathematics competition?" "Yes, sir," Malik answered quietly. "The International Mathematics Challenge. It's the 48th year they've hosted it." "And you qualified?" Daniel asked, incredulous but respectful. Malik nodded modestly. "I did. First through the Chicago regional event, then the Illinois state round, then the national qualifiers. I kept getting invitations to the next level and somehow I ended up here." There was no arrogance in the way he said it, no pride, just the simple truth told by someone who never expected such doors to open in the first place. "And your family must be proud," Daniel said. "They are," Malik replied, his voice gentle. "But they're tired. My mom works 3 shifts back home. My grandma watches the kids. They didn't want me to miss this chance, so the whole block helped raise money for the ticket. The guys from the barbershop, the church group, the market lady on the corner who always gives my siblings an extra apple. Everyone put in what they could." He paused, lowering his eyes. "Even people who didn't have much." Daniel felt something tighten behind his ribs. "They believe in you." Malik nodded. "They believe in what I could become. And I promised them I'd try." Daniel looked down at his daughter, who was still sleeping soundly. "You know," he said softly, "belief is one of the most powerful things someone can give you." Malik glanced toward him. "Did someone believe in you when you were my age?" The question seemed to catch Daniel off guard. His breath stilled for a second before he answered. "Yes," he said. "Not many people, not often, but a few did. Enough to make a difference." He didn't elaborate. Not yet. But the tone in his voice carried memories Malik didn't want to disturb. A soft chime rippled through the cabin, a gentle reminder from the crew that dinner service would begin soon. Light footsteps approached, and Malik stood up instinctively, ready to return to his seat in economy before he overstayed his welcome in a world that had never been meant for him. But Daniel reached out lightly. "Malik, wait." Malik paused, hands at his sides, eyes uncertain. "Please sit," Daniel said, "at least until she wakes up. I could use the company." It was an unusual request. Billionaires did not usually ask teenagers for company, but Daniel's voice carried no superiority, just quiet gratitude. Malik sat again, carefully, the edge of the seat barely creaking under his weight. He still held his posture straight, as if one wrong move might remind everyone that he was from a different part of the world entirely. Daniel noticed the tension. "You're not making anyone uncomfortable," he said gently. "You helped my daughter. You helped me. You belong here as much as anyone." Malik's shoulders loosened a little, though the uncertainty did not fully fade. They sat in another moment of silence before Daniel finally asked, "What kind of problems do you solve in the competition? I mean, what does that world look like?" Malik opened his notebook and turned it so Daniel could see. The page showed no complicated symbols or advanced shapes, no intimidating letters or Greek markings, just simple lines and numbers drawn like waves, up and down, steady and soft. "It's like this," Malik said quietly. "Sometimes they give you a problem that looks messy or impossible. But if you look close enough, the numbers start showing a pattern. Not the kind you calculate with formulas, more like a rhythm, like footsteps repeating, or breathing." Daniel listened with genuine interest. Malik pointed to a sequence of numbers dipping and rising. "This is like asking how things grow when you add one decision to another," he said. "It's not about memorizing formulas. It's more like reading a story hidden under the numbers." Daniel nodded slowly, understanding more through Malik's tone than through the notebook. "So math feels alive to you?" "It does," Malik said. "It feels like something that wants to make sense if you give it time." He closed the notebook again, careful with its worn edges. "That's why I want to study it. Because once you see the patterns, you can solve real problems, problems people live with every day." Daniel leaned back, absorbing the simplicity and the depth of those words. "You have a gift," he said. Malik shook his head. "I just learned to look at things differently. When you grow up in a place where things break a lot, you learn to fix what you can." As he spoke, a flight attendant approached their row. Malik sat up straighter, expecting her to ask him to return to his assigned section. Instead, she smiled at him. "Would you like something to drink, sweetheart? Water? Juice?" The kindness in her voice surprised him. He nodded without speaking. Daniel ordered something as well, and when the attendant stepped away, he whispered, almost to himself, "Interesting how quickly people's attitudes change once they see what someone can do." Malik didn't respond. He didn't need to. They both knew what he meant. A soft murmur spread through the cabin. Passengers who had scowled earlier now spoke with warmth. A few even nodded politely when they passed. The sharp edges of the room had softened, as if Malik's lullaby had echoed through more hearts than just Lila's. Daniel looked down at his daughter again. "She trusts you," he said. "I can tell." Malik smiled faintly. Babies are good at knowing who feels safe. Daniel's breath caught for a moment. Do you think you could help me take care of her while we're in London? I have meetings, long ones, and I can't bring her with me." Malik blinked, startled. "You want me to help? With her?" "Yes," Daniel said. "I'll pay you. More than fairly." "How much?" Malik asked cautiously. $650 a day." For a moment, Malik forgot how to breathe. Sir, that's more than my mom earns in a week." "I know," Daniel said, "and I mean it." Malik hesitated, torn between opportunity and the weight of responsibility he carried. "Sir, I have to compete. It's the biggest chance I've ever had." Daniel nodded. "Your competition comes first. I'll make sure of it. Anytime you're needed for preparation, studying, anything, you're free." Malik looked down at his hands. "Let me think about it," he said softly. "Of course," Daniel replied gently. "Take all the time you need." As Malik stood to return to his seat, Lila stirred again, opening her sleepy eyes just enough to see the boy who had brought her peace. She blinked once, twice, then sighed, soft and trusting. Malik smiled at her. "I'll check on her later," he said quietly. And as he walked back toward economy, for the first time since the flight began, Daniel felt the sky above him stop pressing down. Something in the air had shifted, something calm, something hopeful, something beginning. The plane glided through a pocket of quiet air, and for the first time since takeoff, Daniel felt his shoulders lower from around his ears. Lila slept peacefully in his arms, her breath warm and gentle against his chest. The hum of the engines seemed softer now, soothed by something invisible that lingered in the space Malik had left behind. Even the cabin, once tight with irritation and tension, now felt open, almost serene. Daniel glanced down the aisle. Malik walked slowly back toward economy, careful not to draw attention, yet unable to hide the quiet strength in the way he carried himself. The boy moved with a mixture of humility and purpose, as if he was trying to be invisible but was made of something that refused to fade into the background. For a moment, Daniel wondered how many people in his own world had once looked like that. Young, bright, determined, yet were overlooked because they didn't arrive in the right clothes or from the right neighborhoods. The thought lingered long after Malik disappeared behind the curtain. Lila shifted softly, and Daniel adjusted her gently. Her face had relaxed so completely that she looked like an entirely different child. Hours ago, she had been trembling and frantic. Now she seemed weightless, as if the storm within her had finally been coaxed into sleep. Ms. Bennett approached with a quiet smile. "She looks much better." "She does," Daniel said, unable to hide the mixture of relief and gratitude in his voice. Your friend knew exactly what to do, she added, glancing toward the economy section. Daniel hummed. Yes, he really did. There was a pause, a thoughtful one, before she spoke again. It takes a lot of heart to care for a child that way, and even more courage to step forward in a situation like that. Daniel knew exactly what she meant. Courage was not always loud or forceful. Sometimes it was the quiet kind, the kind that walked up an aisle when others decided it wasn't their place. When the attendant stepped away, Daniel looked down at his daughter again. Her tiny hand rested softly near his collar, her fingers curled like a delicate promise. He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you," he whispered, not just to her but to the boy who had given her peace. The plane lights dimmed further, settling into the soft glow meant to mimic dusk. Passengers settled into their seats, some drifting into sleep, others scrolling quietly on their devices. But Daniel found himself too awake to rest. His mind kept circling back to Malik, to the way he had spoken about his family, to the stitched patches on his backpack, to the simple, unpracticed humility with which he calmed a child who wasn't his. He had seen brilliance before, brilliant engineers, brilliant researchers, brilliant entrepreneurs, but he had never seen brilliance packaged so quietly, so unguardedly, so intertwined with compassion. Lila's breathing lulled him into a gentle rhythm, yet the questions kept rising. Who taught him to hold a baby that way? How had he learned to understand patterns, not just numbers, but people? And how had someone so young learned to carry the weight of expectation with such grace? The cabin was silent when Malik returned about 30 minutes later. Daniel hadn't expected him to come back so soon, but there he was, standing in the aisle with a hesitant expression, as if unsure whether he was allowed to be near first class again. Daniel lifted a hand in a soft gesture to invite him forward. Malik stepped quietly between the seats. His eyes fell immediately on Lila, and the concern that appeared on his face was not the polite kind. It was instinctive, protective, real. "Is she still okay?" Malik asked softly. Daniel nodded. "She hasn't made a sound." A small smile flickered across Malik's face, the kind that only appears when someone sees their effort bring comfort to another person. "You really have a gift," Daniel said. Malik shook his head. "It's not a gift. It's just paying attention." He said it as though it were simple, but Daniel knew better. Paying attention, real attention, was so rare that it often came across as miraculous. People rushed through life, glancing but not truly seeing, listening but not truly hearing. Malik didn't just notice things, he understood them. "Sit for a moment," Daniel said. "Please." Malik hesitated, then lowered himself back into the seat beside Daniel, careful not to disturb Lila's fragile peace. A few rows back, Gerald pretended to be deeply interested in the in-flight magazine, though his eyes kept drifting toward Malik in a new kind of respect. Cassandra, who had run out of complaints to send her assistant, watched with an expression far softer than before. The cabin had shifted. Malik had shifted it. "What you said earlier," Daniel began, "about solving problems like reading a story underneath the numbers. I've never heard mathematics described like that." Malik's cheeks warmed slightly. "It's just how I see it." "You must see a lot," Daniel said, meaning it. Malik looked down, tracing the seam of his backpack lightly with his thumb. "Sometimes I see things I wish I didn't." Daniel studied him. "Like what?" "Like how tough it is for some people to get a chance," Malik said quietly. "Or how sometimes the brightest kids back home never even get noticed. Some of them could solve problems that might change the world, but they're too busy dealing with real life to ever get the chance. Daniel listened longer than he expected to. I want to change that, Malik added. One day. It was said without bravado, without ego, just intention, a clear sense of purpose wrapped in humility. Daniel felt something shift in him, a recognition, not of the boy Malik was now, but of the man he was quietly becoming. You said one day, Daniel murmured. Why not sooner? Malik blinked. What do you mean? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he let the question float between them. He wasn't ready to share the buildup of thoughts swirling through him, the growing belief that this child from the South Side might one day shape more of the world than the expensive minds he met in boardrooms. Instead, he asked softly, Do you have everything you need for this competition? Malik hesitated. I have my notebook, and the problems they sent to practice, and hope. He said it with a small smile, but the truth beneath it was heavier. Hope was not the same as resources. Hope alone could not buy textbooks or tutors or plane tickets. Hope alone could not open every door. Daniel opened his mouth to say something, but Lila stirred again, stretching one hand toward Malik as if reaching for someone familiar. Malik leaned slightly closer, whispering softly, It's okay, little one. You're safe. Her hand settled gently against his forearm. And Daniel, watching the way Lila responded to this boy who had appeared like a quiet miracle, felt something inside him settle into certainty. This was not a coincidence, not a lucky moment, not a simple interaction on a long flight. This was the beginning of something neither of them could yet describe. Daniel exhaled slowly. Malik, he said, his voice lower and steadier than before. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Something important. Malik looked up, curiosity soft but bright in his eyes. I'm listening, he said, and the journey that had begun with a baby's cry now unfolded into something deeper, two lives stepping into each other's light, neither knowing how far that light would reach. The plane drifted into the early morning sky above London, its wings slicing gently through a curtain of pale clouds. Malik watched the world tilt beneath him from the small economy window. Patches of green fields, winding roads, and the distant shimmer of the River Thames. Even from this height, the city seemed enormous, like a puzzle too large to solve in a single glance. It felt unreal that he, a boy from a one-bedroom apartment on the South Side, was arriving here with nothing but a patched backpack and a community's hopes stitched into every seam. When the plane landed and the doors finally opened, passengers rose from their seats, gathering their expensive luggage and polished shoes. Malik lingered near his row, waiting until the aisle emptied. He didn't want to be in the way. He didn't want to look like he was rushing toward a place he wasn't sure welcomed him. But as he stepped out into the bridge connecting the aircraft to the airport, he saw Daniel waiting a little ahead, holding a now rested Lila against his shoulder. Daniel's expression softened when he saw Malik approach. Morning, Daniel said quietly. Did you sleep at all? Malik shook his head. Not really. Too much on my mind. Daniel understood without needing to ask. Malik's entire future depended on what would happen during the next 6 days. And yet, this boy had chosen to help a stranger first. Well, Daniel said, shifting Lila gently. There's a car waiting outside for us. If you're comfortable riding with us, I'd like that very much. Malik hesitated. Are you sure? I don't want to cause trouble. You won't, Daniel said, with a calm certainty that left no room for doubt. and I'd prefer not to lose track of you." The words were spoken with sincerity, not authority. Malik nodded silently and followed them through the bustling terminal. The car waiting outside was like something from a movie, a sleek black sedan with windows tinted to a mirror sheen. The driver, Mr. Hawthorne, stepped forward, greeting Daniel with practiced respect before turning to Malik with the same warmth, without a hint of hesitation. Inside the car, Malik tried not to stare at the leather seats or the chilled bottled water resting in glass holders. He sat carefully, as if afraid he might leave fingerprints somewhere he shouldn't. Daniel noticed his caution and gave him a reassuring nod. "Relax," he said softly. "You're safe here." The words sank deeper than Daniel intended. Safe. It had been a long time since Malik had heard that word from someone who wasn't family. As the car glided through London's quiet morning streets, the city opened itself slowly. Row houses painted in muted colors, bridges arched over gentle rivers, storefronts preparing for the day. Malik watched everything, storing every detail like he was reading a new story. "You'll have time to explore a little after your competition," Daniel said. "But today, we'll get you settled first." The car turned into a circular driveway paved with stone, and the Langham-like hotel rose before them. Tall, elegant, glittering with windows that caught the morning sun. Malik's breath caught in his chest. He had never seen anything so grand. The lobby was warmer than he expected, filled with soft lighting, marble floors, and a scent like fresh flowers and polished wood. A chandelier hung overhead like a cluster of glass stars. For a moment, Malik felt small, not in a painful way, but in a way that reminded him he was standing somewhere far from anything he had ever known. The hotel manager, Mr. Sinclair, approached them with practiced grace. "Mr. Harrington, welcome back. Your suite is prepared, as well as the adjoining room for your young guest." Young guest. Malik blinked at the phrasing. He had thought he would be placed somewhere far away, maybe another floor entirely. Instead, he had been given a space right next to Daniel and Lila. Daniel touched Malik's shoulder lightly. "Come on, let me show you." They rode the elevator to the upper floors, silent except for the soft chime marking each level. When the doors opened, they stepped into a hallway lined with thick carpet and framed artwork. Daniel used a key card to unlock the suite, and the door swung open into a space larger than anything Malik had ever walked into. The living area was wide and filled with natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows. Against the backdrop of the city stood a full kitchen, a dining table, and plush furniture arranged neatly around a low coffee table. Malik took it all in with a mixture of awe and quiet disbelief. "This is your room," Daniel said, guiding him to a door on the right. Malik stepped inside and almost stopped breathing. The room was more beautiful than the photos he had seen of luxury hotels online. A huge bed rested under crisp white linens. A window overlooked Hyde Park. A desk stood near the corner, stocked with a lamp, notepad, and pen, ready for someone who needed to think late into the night. "You'll have full privacy," Daniel said, "and room service, and anything else you need." Malik touched the back of the chair lightly, as if confirming the room was real. "Sir, this is too much." "It's not," Daniel said. "It's what you deserve after everything you've done." Malik shook his head softly. "All I did was help your daughter." "You did more than that," Daniel replied. "You turned a moment of crisis into a moment of grace, and I don't forget things like that." Lila, resting comfortably in Daniel's arms, reached out toward Malik with a tiny open hand. Malik smiled as he reached back, letting her small fingers curl gently around his. Daniel watched the moment unfold, something thoughtful blooming behind his eyes. "You know," Daniel said softly, "last night you showed me something most people never do. You cared without being asked. You stepped forward even though it might have cost you. That tells me more about who you are than any resume or award ever could." Malik lowered his eyes, humility softening his expression. "I just did what felt right. And that," Daniel said, "is why I want to make sure you're supported here. Your competition begins tomorrow. You need rest, food, and space. Take whatever you need." Malik nodded, still overwhelmed by the generosity. He placed his backpack on the bed gently, almost reverently, as if afraid the fabric patches might scratch the sheets. Daniel shifted Lila carefully, adjusting her blanket. "When you've settled in, join us for breakfast. I'd like to talk about your plans, your goals, and anything else you want to share." Malik paused in the doorway of his room. "Sir, can I ask something?" "Anything," Daniel said. "Why are you doing all this for me?" Daniel looked down at his daughter, then back up at Malik. "Because someone once helped me when they didn't have to," he said quietly. "And because when I looked at you yesterday, I recognized a younger version of myself. A boy who wanted to prove to the world that where you start does not have to define where you go." Malik swallowed, emotion tightening his chest. "Thank you," he whispered. Daniel nodded. "Rest now. Tomorrow your story continues." And as Malik stepped fully into his room, closing the door gently behind him, he felt something warming in his chest. A feeling that perhaps, just perhaps, this city held more for him than a competition. Maybe it held a possibility he hadn't yet dared to name. Morning light washed over London in a soft gold, slipping through the tall window of Malik's room like a gentle invitation. He had slept lightly, not because the bed was unfamiliar, but because his mind hummed with the distant echo of numbers and patterns. Not the harsh symbols of difficult equations, but the kind of slow-moving rhythms he always saw when he tried to quiet his thoughts. Lines rising and falling like the city's skyline outside. He dressed quietly, smoothing the creases in his shirt as best he could. When he stepped into the hallway, he heard light footsteps from the suite next door. Daniel opened his door a moment later, carrying Lila, who gave a sleepy smile at the sight of Malik. "Good morning," Daniel said. "Are you ready?" "I think so," Malik replied. "You don't need to think," Daniel said gently. "You just need to be yourself." They rode down in the elevator and walked into the hotel's breakfast lounge, where warm pastries and fresh fruit lined the tables. Malik took only a little, still hesitant to appear greedy in a place that seemed designed for ease. Daniel noticed, of course, and quietly added another croissant to Malik's plate. "Eat," he said. "Your mind needs fuel." Malik smiled softly and nodded. After breakfast, a car took them to the competition venue, a historic building with stone pillars and tall glass doors that gleamed like polished water under the morning sun. Students streamed inside, speaking in quiet tones, each carrying their dreams like invisible luggage. Daniel placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. "I'll be here when you're done," he said. "Go show them what you can do." Malik stepped inside. The space felt sacred in its own way. Rows of long tables stretched across a bright hall. Judges moved quietly, arranging papers and pencils. There were no complicated symbols printed on the front pages, just gentle instructions and problems that waited for someone patient enough to see through their layers. When the clock started, Malik took a slow breath. He looked at the first problem, not as something impossible, but as a story waiting to be understood. It described a series of choices, each one affecting the next. No formulas, no sudden jumps, just a trail of decisions branching like a tree, each path shaped by the one before it. He imagined the choices as footsteps, left, right, forward, back, and then he imagined how many ways those footsteps could lead back home. He traced them softly on the blank side of the page, not numbers, but movements, until the pattern revealed itself like a familiar rhythm. The next question described a small neighborhood with streets that curved into one another. Each road led to two others. It asked how long it would take for a message to travel across the entire neighborhood if each person passed it to two friends. Malik smiled. He thought of his own block back home, how news spread fastest through the barbershop and the corner store, then traveled like wildfire through the rest of the street. He followed that rhythm on paper, imagining each person passing the message with quick steps. By the time he finished, the solution felt gentle and obvious. Hours passed. When the final problem was complete, Malik placed his pencil down, breathing out slowly. He didn't know if he had impressed the judges, but he knew that he had honored the people who sent him here. When he stepped outside, Daniel was waiting just a few feet away, holding Lila. She reached toward Malik immediately, and he couldn't help but laugh softly. "Everything go well?" Daniel asked. "I think so," Malik said. "Some problems were new, but I found their patterns." Daniel nodded proudly. "That's all you needed to do." They returned to the hotel, and after lunch, Daniel sat in the suite's living room while Malik played softly with Lila. He used a small set of colorful blocks from his backpack, simple shapes in bright colors. "See this one?" Malik said gently to the baby, holding up a blue block. "If you put two of these next to each other, they make a longer shape. Not exactly double, but longer." He placed the block next to a red one. "And when you add color, it changes the pattern again." Lila stared with wide eyes, fascinated not so much by the blocks themselves, but by the steady warmth in Malik's voice. Daniel watched silently, struck by how effortlessly Malik translated abstract thinking into something a child could hold. Not numbers, not symbols, just colors, shapes, and small ideas arranged like tiny stepping stones. "You have a gift," Daniel said again, this time with more conviction than before. "It's just simple things," Malik said modestly. "Simple for you," Daniel said, "but the world doesn't always understand what simple can do." Later that evening, while Lila slept in her travel crib, Daniel sat across from Malik at the small dining table, fingers loosely folded. "Malik," he began, "I want to share something with you." Malik looked up, attentive. "When I was your age," Daniel said, "I didn't have much either. My father worked long nights at a factory. My mother cleaned office buildings after closing hours. I used to wait for her in the lobby after school. I'd watch her sweep the floor and think that life was supposed to be small." Malik didn't interrupt. "But someone saw potential in me," Daniel continued. "A teacher who stayed after class, a neighbor who loaned me books, a mentor who helped me get scholarship interviews. I owe everything I have to the people who believed before I even understood why they believed." He paused, eyes softening. "And now, when I look at you, I feel like I'm seeing another version of that story. Only this time, I'm on the other side." Malik swallowed gently. "I'm just trying to make my community proud." "You already have," Daniel said. and I want to help you go further." He leaned forward. "My company is planning a new division, one focused on using artificial intelligence to solve problems in education, health, and community infrastructure. We need minds who understand not just numbers, but people, minds like yours." Malik blinked, unsure if he had heard him correctly. "I'm not offering you a job now," Daniel clarified. "You need to study, grow, live. But one day, after college, I want you to join us." He let the words settle gently. "And until then, the Harrington Foundation will cover your education, all of it, wherever you choose to study." Malik stared at him, stunned. The room felt suddenly too quiet, too intimate, too unreal. "Sir," he said softly, that's too much." Daniel shook his head. "No, it's exactly what you've earned." Malik closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the promise settle into his chest like a warm, steady flame. He thought of his siblings, his mother working her third shift, his grandmother humming lullabies to tired children. He thought of the community that sent him here with hope as their currency. When he opened his eyes again, they glimmered not with disbelief, but with purpose. "What do I need to do?" Malik whispered. "Just keep being who you are," Daniel said softly. "The rest will fall into place." And for the first time since arriving in London, Malik felt the city open itself to him, not as a stranger, but as a possibility. Morning arrived in London quietly, as if the city itself understood the weight of the day ahead. Malik stood outside the competition hall with his hands lightly clasped, breathing in the cool air. Behind him, the ancient stone facade of the building rose like a reminder that thousands had stood here before him. Scholars, thinkers, dreamers, each bringing their own hopes into its timeless rooms. Daniel stood a few steps away, holding Lila in her thick little jacket. Her curious eyes wandered across the street, pausing whenever a car passed by or a bird hopped lazily across the pavement. She leaned forward when she saw Malik, reaching toward him with an open hand, as if she recognized something soft and steady in him. "She wants to wish you luck," Daniel said, smiling as he shifted her weight. Malik reached out and let her tiny fingers wrap around his. "Thank you, little one," he whispered. "I'll try my best." Daniel nodded. "That's all any of us can do." The competition's final round was an open problem, a single question with no fixed formula, no simple path, no straight lines. Just a description of something that happened in the real world, layered with small clues and tangled possibilities. Contestants had to read, understand, think, and propose a solution that was not only mathematically sound, but practical and compassionate. Today's problem imagined a crowded neighborhood where families lived close together, and a small illness had begun spreading from house to house. The challenge was to create a prediction model, something that would help communities understand where the illness might go next and what steps could slow it down. There were no symbols on the page that would confuse a reader, no sharp equations, just words, gentle but demanding, asking for clarity. Malik read it once, then again, and a third time. He didn't immediately pick up his pencil. Instead, he closed his eyes and pictured home. The old brick buildings, the narrow streets, kids playing basketball with a hoop made from wire, parents rushing from bus stops to night shifts, neighbors sharing food through cracked doors. He understood the closeness of such places, how quickly news spread, how quickly fear spread, how even something small moved like ripples across water. He opened his eyes and began to draw, not numbers but shapes, little circles representing houses, lines representing paths between them. He noted how often people crossed one another's routes on the way to school, to work, to get groceries. He described how small changes could slow transmission, opening windows, staggering school start times, borrowing space from public buildings to reduce crowding. He added a gentle explanation. When people live close together, the pathways between them matter as much as the illness itself. If we find the rhythm of the neighborhood, where people gather, where they rest, where they meet, then we can understand how to protect them. He wrote it slowly, making sure each idea felt soft enough to be understood, yet strong enough to stand on its own. When time was called, Malik stepped back from his work. It was not perfect, it was not grand, but it was honest and built from the life he knew. He handed in his papers, breathing deeply before walking out to the hallway where Daniel waited. "You finished?" Daniel asked. Malik nodded. "I think I found the pattern hidden inside. That's all that matters." They returned to the suite where the afternoon passed gently. Malik fed Lila soft bites of mashed banana, earning small giggles that melted the leftovers of the morning's tension. Daniel watched, quietly humbled by how seamlessly this boy connected with his daughter, as though he belonged in her world as much as he belonged in equations and patterns. As the sun lowered, casting long strands of light across the city, they returned to the hall for the award ceremony. The crowd buzzed with quiet excitement. Delegations from 72 countries filled the rows. Flags lined the edge of the stage. Judges sat at the front, their expressions calm but eager. When the announcer finally stepped forward, the room fell into a hush that felt almost sacred. "In third place," she said, "representing Germany, Lucas Stein." Polite applause filled the hall. "In second place, representing South Korea, Han Ji-seok." More applause. A few cheers from the back rows. Malik stood absolutely still. "And in first place," the announcer continued, pausing just a moment, the kind of pause that makes a heart forget itself, "representing the United States, Malik Carter." The hall erupted, but Malik heard none of it at first. His breath caught, his vision blurred. It felt unreal, like he was dreaming with his eyes open. He walked toward the stage as if pulled by something gentle and luminous. Lila clapped in Daniel's arms, tiny hands slapping excitedly, her laughter rising above the applause. And when Malik turned toward her, the pride in Daniel's expression was unmistakable, open, unguarded, and deeply human. After the ceremony, they returned to the suite where the city lights glittered outside like scattered stars. Daniel placed Lila gently in her crib, then turned to Malik with a quiet smile. "You did it," Daniel said. "We did it," Malik corrected softly. "I wouldn't even be here if you hadn't helped." Daniel shook his head. "No, Malik. You were always meant to be here. I just helped open a door. You're the one who walked through it." Malik sat down on the couch, staring at the trophy in his hands. "My mom? My grandma? They're going to be so happy." "They already are," Daniel said. "And they'll be even prouder when they see where this leads." They spoke for a long time, about community, about the kids back home who needed someone to believe in them, about the ways mathematics could be used to understand people, rather than simply calculating numbers. Later that night, as they boarded the flight home, Malik found himself by the window. Daniel took the seat beside him, Lila resting peacefully once more. London stretched out below them, bright, intricate, and unexpectedly familiar. As the plane rose into the sky, Malik whispered something he had been carrying inside him, since the moment he first stood up on that flight. "It all started with a baby's cry," he murmured. "I never knew one moment could change everything." Daniel glanced at him, his voice warm and steady. "Most people miss the moments that matter," he said. "But you didn't, and that made all the difference." Malik looked ahead, watching the city shrink into a tapestry of light. For the first time in his life, the future didn't feel like something he needed to chase. It felt like something walking beside him, quiet, steady, and full of promise.